thread where you're not going to be using profanity or ugly, slandering people, then any question, great. Differ with me on something, have at it. I do want to talk to you today about why I'm not chasing down any of the many conspiracy theories regarding COVID-19. I'll tell you a bunch of them, but what my attitude is, why I'm responding the way that I am. I have an update on my forthcoming book, When the World Stops. Talk to you about that. And before I get into any of that, a little fun last night on the apologetics tournament on Twitter. Okay, so for those who haven't followed this, a young man put something together last year called March Madness. Those of you who watch college basketball in America know that that's the big tournament of the NCAA, National Collegiate Athletic Association. And it gets a lot of attention. You have a bracket of 64 teams, right? And then they're in 4 different parts of the country. So 4 different groups of 16. I think that's the way it works. And then the number 1 seed, so the top rank, plays the number 16. And then you keep going till you're down to your final 16 out of the 64. Then out of that, so that's the Sweet 16, then the Elite 8, then the Final 4, and then the championship match. So you lose, you're out, right? So it's kind of an exciting tournament. So this young man put this together with his own organization, ministry, Adherent Apologetics, that he was growing online. And he put together different apologists, and then you just vote for your favorite one. So basically what it comes down to, who's got a better Twitter following and can mobilize their folks. So a lot of the people on the list, they had no clue it was even going on. But when I found out about it, we had fun with our team. We put these memes together like it was a real competition, and I made it all the way to the finals where I was defeated by C.S. Lewis. So this year, there were 256 participants. You say, why engage in a silly thing like that? Isn't it like personalities, ego, and flesh? Like, first, no one takes it seriously in terms of this proves anything. Who is the greatest apologist? First, there is no greatest apologist. We're all here to exalt Jesus. And second, everyone has different ministries and different influences, and we're blessed to be able to serve and help anybody. But it basically comes down to who can better mobilize their followers on Twitter and get the most votes. But the reason we participated, it's a fun thing. It's a fun thing to do. A bit of a distraction right now when so many people are burdened down, weighed down, so much going on in the world around us. But for me, it was a great opportunity to see, wow, I didn't know, who is this person? Literally never heard of them, never heard their name. And then go on, find out, wow, they're having great impact. They're doing really good ministry, and they specialize here. And they're just kind of realizing how big your family is, how many others are out there doing what you're doing. And then that's also telling me there must be a bunch of people who don't know me. And now we can expose them to what we're doing. And maybe we'll find us as a resource for Jewish apologetics or for cultural apologetics. Or maybe they'll find out that there are charismatics that do apologetics. And so anyway, it's been fun. So we had the mega contest in the Elite 8 where it was me against my buddy James White, Dr. White. We went on each other's shows that day. We generated the most votes in the history of the competition, kind of smashing previous things, but he beat me fair and square. It's like, I don't know, almost 2-1 in the voting. I mean, he did really well. We pulled out all the stops. We even put out a workout video. If you haven't seen it, it's hysterical. My producer, Matt, came up with concepts. We put it together. It's just a lot of fun. But he still won. So I said, man, you got my vote from here on in. So it was then him against his coworker, fellow elder, Jeff Durbin. So, of course, I voted for James, and he beat Jeff easily. And then now he's in the final against Ravi Zacharias. So, hey, that's my buddy James. I voted for him, and he's way ahead of Ravi. And, of course, Ravi doesn't even know the thing is going on, and he's in a battle with cancer for his own life as well. So as the thing goes on, I noticed that Ravi's organization retweeted this, and I thought, oh, do they even know this is going on? I thought, maybe I could use this to generate prayer for Ravi's healing and tell a lot of people about it and send some encouragement. Hey, vote for Ravi. And then he tweeted like, boy, how, I didn't know about this. I haven't been in a tournament like this since my cricket days, obviously having a little fun with it. And then it turns out my good buddy, Dr. James White, when it was a consolation round to see who's going to get third place, who's going to get fourth, he voted for Jeff Durbin, his colleague, his closer colleague, which meant he voted against me. Kind of campaigned for Jeff. I thought, wait a second, man, I voted for you against Jeff. Now you voted for me. I kind of you voted for Jeff against me. I kind of owe you one. So I mean, we're again, this is all for fun, and James and I are jostling each other behind the scenes. So I noticed yesterday that when Ravi's retweeted this, because he's got a bigger Twitter following than any of us, he retweeted this, and I saw, look at this. This is Ravi might actually make a comeback here. And there are only a few hours to go. I thought of doing it. I thought, nah, that's carnal. I'm not going to. And I thought, no, wait a second. Let's just have a little fun and send some encouragement to Ravi. He's battling cancer, and a lot of people don't even know he has cancer. So I posted his picture on Facebook and Twitter and said, hey, let's get Ravi home here. He can actually beat my buddy James in a last-minute comeback for the ages, and he knows about it. So let's tell him we're praying for him. So it turns out, with like minutes to go, he passed James. It was epic. It was absolutely epic. And yes, I helped push him over to defeat my dear colleague James White, who in turn voted against me, voted for his colleague Jeff Durbin. So anyway, the neat thing is, I had shot a note to Robbie's organization because I don't know anyone there personally in terms of having an ongoing relationship. I never even met Ravi face to face, although I knew that he knew of my work in Jewish apologetics and other things. So I shot a note privately and said, would it be okay to do this? And they said, oh, that'd be a great encouragement. And so now I know he knows about the whole thing and all this. So his wife was able to tell him last night, and he's got, treatments, he's going, chemotherapy, whatever. She was able to tell him that he won the tournament and all these people were praying for him. So it really ministered to him that people are sending their love and prayers. So sorry, James, I had to do it, but let's keep praying. Let's keep praying for his healing and for God's grace in his life. Okay, now a related subject. Nancy and I were talking about this last night. People are saying, well, why does God send a virus? Or why does God allow a virus? Or why is this even happening? Where is God? I don't find this question really relevant, meaning people are dying every day. People are dying of cancer every day. Children are dying. Freak accidents, people are dying. Natural disasters, people are dying. There's tragedy and suffering and pain here in the world all the time. In other words, this isn't always question. This is not like, why this virus? Look, if 9/10 of the world was wiped out or something and everyone's laying in the street, groaning, and then you wonder, okay, why and how? But the problem of suffering, that's a genuine problem. The question of the goodness of God in a hurting world, why would God create a world knowing there would be so much pain and suffering? Why doesn't he intervene? Why doesn't he hear the cries of his people more? Why doesn't he pay attention to the cries of a suffering world? Why does he ignore the cries of a starving baby in Africa or wherever? Those are all very valid questions, and questions worth asking and thinking about. And they do not deserve a superficial response. They deserve a serious response, an in-depth response, and one that ultimately points to the cross, where we find the ultimate answers to our questions. But the virus doesn't raise this question. This is not something new because people are dying of a virus. This is an always question. Now, the old problem is stated like this. Does it go back to Epicurus? It's stated like this. God cannot be all good, all-knowing, and all-powerful. If he were, then we would not have the world we have. So let's think it through. This is the old argument. If God is all good and all-powerful, then he couldn't be all-knowing, because he would not have created a world in which there would be so much suffering. If he's all good, right, he wouldn't want that. And if he's all-powerful, he can stop it. The fact that he created the world and this happened meant that he's not all-knowing. Or let's say he's all-knowing and he's all good. He foresaw what would happen, and he doesn't want this suffering to be there. So he's obviously not all-powerful because he can't stop it. And if he's all powerful, he can stop it. He's all knowing. He created the world knowing there would be this kind of suffering. He's not all good because he has the power to intervene, and he doesn't. So that's the classic old argument, which to many still carries weight. And the big answer is that he is all good, all knowing, and all powerful, and knew that by creating a universe in which there would ultimately be so much pain and suffering here on the earth, by creating this world and giving human beings free will, and knowing what would ultimately happen, and knowing the agony and the pain and the torture and all of the terrible things that would exist in this world, knowing all of that, he created it as an all-good, all-loving, all-powerful God, knowing that the final eternal outcome would justify the pain that it took to get there. That's the large answer, which then has to be unpacked. And then, more specifically, when you point to it from a gospel perspective, why would God have created a world in which he would have to send his own son to die for the sins of people who rebelled against him, to pay a horrific price? Why would he do that unless he really is love and unless he really has a larger plan? If you've never watched the debate I did with Professor Bart Ehrman, Ehrman, just go to YouTube and type in Michael Brown, Bart Ehrman, and you'll see the debate we did some years back at Ohio State University. All right, I want to talk to you in a moment about conspiracy theories and why I am not responding to them, looking into the latest of them. And let's just see here. Okay. Let's see. Just taking a look here at some questions. Okay. Here we go. Before I get into some of your questions and the conspiracy theory issues, just want to give you an update on when the world stops. Just checking a few things that got my attention, but we're going to wait on those. When the world stops, words of faith, hope, and wisdom in the midst of crisis. April 21st is the release date for the ebook and the paperback book. It's going to be about 160 pages, but we are going to be sending out an e-blast announcing this. Just had a talk with the publisher about a few things, and because there's not enough time for them to ramp up a normal publicity campaign for the book, because I proposed writing it on March 18th and finished it March 26th, and they've been scrambling to get everything done and get it ready, beautiful cover, and get everything ready to put a nice book in your hands. But we are going to give you a special offer with the book and a whole free audio series, normally a 12-hour, $20 audio series that we want to bless you with when you order it through our website. So we are going to be announcing that very, very soon. To make sure you follow the announcement, just get on our email list. So go to AskDrBrown, askdrbrown.org. Go there, sign up for our emails, all right? And when you do that, then you will know, you'll be the first to know about the special offer. And we want to sign the books for you to be a blessing to you. And I'm telling you, this book is probably the most timely I've ever written because it's right in the midst of crisis. But even if everything radically shifted in a week, the book is going to be relevant for 20 years to come, okay? So it's something you're going to want. It will help you, bless you. And we end the book going through Psalm 91, verse by verse in the Hebrew, in depth, opening it up for you, making it as practical as possible. So I trust this is going to be a blessing to you. Okay. The latest theories about the origins of the virus, about why we should be careful about a vaccine, about does this relate to 5G, wireless, radiation, is China behind this as a bioweapon? Is this part of a larger push for a one-world government? Does this tie in with Antichrist? I am not saying this to disparage any of you who have sent me videos or articles. Please understand this. I'm not saying this to disparage anyone. I'm not saying this with any mockery in my tone. I'm not saying this to be critical, okay? Some of you have researched things, looked into things, and feel there's a lot of evidence. Maybe you felt a certain way for many years, and this has confirmed them, okay? So here's the deal. You ready? I do not have the time to review 1/100th of what is sent me. I appreciate people taking interest in wanting me to see this, read this, watch this, check this out. It's only an hour long. Read this. It's only 20 pages long. I appreciate you wanting me to know and thinking that it's important that I know certain things, okay? However, I do not have the time to look into all of these. That's number one. Number two, how am I going to figure out from my vantage point what actually happened in Wuhan, China? In other words, what makes me the one that's going to be able to figure this out? Oh, no, the evidence on the internet. Well, okay, I could show you 50 or 100 other things with completely contradictory theories showing evidence. In other words, to sift through, to get to the root of this, to get to the base of this, to actually understand what's credible, what's not. Look, you watch a press conference, a news conference, and you hear contradictory opinions within the White House and within their committees dealing with this. And then you read specialists. Every day, this one arguing this one arguing this, and this model is right, and this model is wrong, and this is accurate, and this is not accurate. I know what it is to do serious research. I'm a textual, fact-based person. My PhD, as you know, was in Near Eastern languages and literatures from New York University, not in theology, although that's worthy, not in philosophy, although that's worthy, not in many other worthy subjects, but Near Eastern languages and literatures. In other words, we read texts. We sat and read ancient texts. That's what we did. We learned ancient languages and we read ancient texts. And then we sought to understand what they were saying and interpret them rightly. That's what I spent years doing. That's my orientation. So I want to see irrefutable evidence, hard evidence, not 9,000 dots that need to be connected for the theory to be plausible. And again, maybe you're convinced of something. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not mocking your position. I'm not being condescending. Well, I'm too smart to be taken in by that. I'm not saying any of those things. What I'm saying is, I don't have time to read, review everything that's no, but Dr. Brown, mine's important. They're all important. In other words, I'm told this is the one, this is the urgent one. That's did I say one or A? Okay, A this time. B, I do not have the expertise, either scientific or economic or political or social science or epidemiological. I do not have the expertise to sort through these things when you have so many conflicting opinions. And now let me give you a 3 or C, as I've been going here alphabetically. Ultimately, and this is something I cover in the new book. There's a chapter called What Caused the Virus and Does It Really Matter? Ultimately, I've got to respond practically to the world I am in. Ultimately, I have to respond practically to this world that I live in, to what's happening around me. That's what I'm responsible for. So here's an example. And let me just see if my article is up yet, because I wrote about this as well last night in anticipation of talking about this on the radio today. Is it up there yet? No, let's check my website, Ask Dr. Brown. Let's see if it's up there yet. Nope, not up there either. Okay. Anyway, I wrote an article last night explaining why I'm not responding to the latest theories. And hang on, let me just make sure that went out properly and everybody actually got that. Since we don't have our normal radio format, let me just double check to make sure Everyone was supposed to get this. Got it last night when I sent it out, because I don't see it up anywhere yet. So that's interesting. Okay, let's find this here. Let's find this. It's somewhere. And okay. Anyway, I'm not finding that people have my article that I sent out. You'll have to resend it. All right, we'll sort it out. We will sort it out for you. But here's the example I used in my email last night. You ready? Driving in the car, heavy rain starts pouring down. Are you thinking to yourself, I wonder if that's caused by man-made climate change? I wonder if that's part of a larger weather pattern. Could it be that evil scientists in North Korea are trying to mess with our weather? Is it Martians? No, who thinks any of those questions? What you do is you put the windshield wipers on and drive more carefully. So what we do know is that presently we have this virus. Presently, what's that? Okay, Kai, I don't understand what you just sent. You're going to have to explain that to me. Okay. What we know is there is a deadly, highly contagious virus out there. And it's already killed as many people as die with a normal flu. But that's only with the massive efforts we've been making to keep people safe. The numbers could be astronomical otherwise in terms of how many die. So that's all I need to know right now. We're dealing with this. How should we respond as believers to a time of calamity and of upheaval like this and of uncertainty? What's our message to the world? How should we respond before God? And how should we respond on a practical level in terms of our safety and the safety of our neighbors? That's all I need to know. I don't need to know about any of the other things, okay? I don't need, maybe one day we'll find out. Maybe one day we'll find out there's a bioweapon from China. Maybe one day we'll find out this is a purely natural phenomenon, but people are trying to milk it for this agenda or that. All I need to know is how to respond right now. That simple. Yeah, thanks, Don. Let's get back to your areas of expertise. That's why we watch. So I'm taking time on this because I get tons of people writing to me. And I'm talking about, people that are connected one way to another through us in social media. So they believe in us. They believe in the ministry work we're doing, and they feel it's critically important. I know these things, so I'm explaining what my philosophy is. But yeah, I'm here for my areas of expertise. And here, let's be realistic, okay? I know certain things. I got a working brain. I'm sharp in certain areas, but I'm mess. For every one thing I know, there are a million things I don't know. The same with all of us. I mean, at best, at very best, I'm less ignorant than someone else. That's all. So, as Nancy would often say, who cares about your opinion? Why in the world care about my opinion in an area where I have no expertise? I appreciate you honoring me and wanting me to see things. I know you think I've got a loud voice. We can reach millions of people through radio and internet and writing. I appreciate that, and you want me to know the truth so I can get it out to everybody. But again, these are areas out of my expertise. Okay, got it. I didn't get the weather control joke, but thanks, Kai. We can go over it afterwards. All right. Let's see if there are any questions we want to start responding to here. All right, Kai, why don't you grab some for me and from Facebook or YouTube, and I'll start responding to some of these. And let me just see if there are any on Twitter and stuff. Yeah, normally with radio feed and stuff, we're going to be much more diligent to not have like dead time on the air kind of deal, but I don't mind looking. Let's see. Whoops. Okay. Let's just see here. All right. So tell you what, let's do this. If you have a question for me on any subject under the sun you'd like me to respond to, then I will take some of your questions here. We don't have a specific amount of time that we need to be on the air today. Teresa, what's up with all the 5G conspiracies? I don't know. I heard that there might be some potential dangers with 5G, health dangers and some potential concerns. And then next thing it was tied in with the virus. But one of these things, who knows? I just saw on cnet.com, so a tech website, that absolute proof there's no connection between 5G and a virus, and whatever 5G did or radiation did not possibly related to a virus. But I don't know. I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. I don't know those things. But why is that? I don't know, Teresa, why everybody's into that. Frank, what's the Christian response to helping others at a time like this? And Sharm, thank you that you come to hear me because I'm truthful. Thanks. That is the truth. So we should be putting others first as much as possible. In other words, when the crisis, we first started to realize there was a crisis. 5G was launched in Wuhan. Thanks, Kai. Got it. So when I first began to realize this was going to be a crisis, my first article on the virus was March 2nd. You go back and see I've been consistent from the start. This is serious, but it's not the end of the world. Okay? So from day one, my thought was, how can we minister more to others? What can we do to help others? What can we do to serve others? How can we get more material out to you? How can I be here to minister faith to you and grace to you? And then our concern is, with no travel, that could affect our finances. With people getting financially hurt, that can affect our finances. So we're praying behind the scenes for God's provision, and He's faithfully meeting us. And thank you for those who've stood with us and supported us. But my whole thought was, okay, how can we serve? How can we give? That should be our thought as believers. People don't know God. How can we minister to them? People don't have, we're hoarding. They don't have. How can we bless? How can we help? How can we minister the gospel to those who are lost? How can we be praying for sick people? That should be our whole mentality. Now, one other question on Facebook asked this. Should we not be worried about a new world order or a one world government? There is an unhealthy globalism that could lead to an antichrist type setting. But as I said on the air yesterday, I've been hearing about the preparation for the antichrist for 50 years now, and everything is in place. And this is the key to the new world order or the new world government. So I'm taking all that with a massive grain of salt, while at the same time resisting that which would bring the United States into a global dependency and globalism that would be unhealthy. And that's something that President Trump has very much stood against, but say President George H.W. Bush was much more positive on. All right, let's see. Paul, if we have friends who are strong atheists, do you think we're obligated to make overwhelming efforts to try to change them? Well, Paul, you can't convert an atheist any more than you can convert a fly, meaning we don't have the power to convert someone. And even though we may offer them strong arguments, ultimately, God has to touch their hearts. So to the extent you're burdened for them, I would put in a tremendous effort in prayer for God to open their hearts, open their minds. And then if in the midst of your relationship, healthy dialogue comes up, then do your best to point them to good sources. Do your best to point them to solid arguments. If you don't have them, point them to others who do, and keep praying for them. But don't feel the responsibility, I must somehow get them to change. Pray for them to encounter God, the truth of God. When Nancy and I met in 1974, we were both 19 years old, and she was a very staunch atheist and mocked religious people as weak. We met, began to talk. God opened her heart. God saved her. And she always likes to make clear, don't say you led me to the Lord. God saved me, because He sovereignly intervened in her life. Yeah, I prayed for her and shared the gospel with her, but God intervened in her life. So above all, pray. And then if there's interest, there's so many good resources out there. Debates, books, articles dealing with atheists. You can point them in the right direction. Let's see. David, thanks as always for your generosity. Did Jesus stop on the third cup at the last Seder? We don't know for sure that the 4 cups were in place at that point. as part of the ritual. They well could have been, but how many cups does it mention in the narrative? How many times does he drink? That's all we have record of. That's all we have record of. Everything else is speculation. Don, there's concern about this recurring. Should we be developing small groups so we can continue to meet and support each other during these times? That should be happening anyway. In other words, if your congregation does not have settings where you can meet in smaller groups, then I say something's missing. I'm all for big meetings. I love preaching in churches where in one weekend I can get to 10 or 15 or 20,000 people. That's wonderful. That's awesome. I love that. But to be healthy, for the body to function as a body, you need relationships, you need small groups in different settings, you need the family unit. Again, that'll be in my new book where I deal with that as well. What is church and how do we do it? What lessons can we learn through this that are redemptive? Jared, Bill Gates and George Soros are doing whatever it takes to overrule any of Trump's goals for America, I'm sure. Could be. Yeah, could be. That's why some people voted for Trump, feeling he would fight against an unhealthy globalism or a one world order. And others have other views that they think are right. And that's why we vote accordingly. But ultimately, the church has to be the church, period. Church has to be the church. And we're going to thrive and function in any setting. Remember, it's in the midst of great tribulation in Revelation 7 that a multitude that no one could number comes out of that. So there's going to be massive harvest in the midst of whatever Antichrist does. Ethnos 38. 1, what pitfalls or bad habits have you seen for people that start seriously studying the scriptures on their own and as a group? What would you suggest for beginners Bible study? The serious errors are often taking the word out of context, making the Bible say something it doesn't say, reading it as if it's just a series of unrelated messages. And then you get so focused on one thing and so into one thing and so intensely committed to one thing that you lose sight of the rest of it. I would just start with a general Bible survey, a survey of the Bible where you read, a little bit from each book of the Bible and get an overview of it. I would start there, or I would just do something kind of a little historical overview of Old Testament, New Testament, so people get the scope of things. Or, okay, let's just read through one of the Gospels verse by verse and learn how to do personal Bible study and principles of interpretation, just things like that. Kathleen, can you do Passover when you don't have elements? What do you think God would say? Do you think he would say? It's a great question. And traditional Jews are struggling as to how to do Passover alone when it's a communal event, the Passover Seder. But remember, the elements are Jewish tradition. They're not Bible. They're Jewish tradition. So you don't need them to celebrate the Passover to God. And we're under no obligation to celebrate a Jewish traditional Seder. That comes later. That comes after the time of Jesus, okay? So I would focus on celebrating his death and his resurrection, and with whatever things you have, be it communion elements or something else that help enrich you and make it meaningful for you or for your family, wonderful. Mark, could you tell us a bit about your own devotional life, if you don't mind? No, I'm happy to. I often say this, though. I do not encourage people to follow my example in terms of the pattern of how I do what I do, meaning that I'm a late night person and that the bulk of my greatest prayer times and times really going after God for hours, the bulk of those times for decades have been late at night. That's often when I do my best writing. It's late at night, sometimes past midnight. A.W. Tozer talked about revivals born after midnight when you're just crying out extra and seeking the face of God. And especially in cultures where you don't have electricity, nighttime is nighttime. You can only get so much done by candle. Go to sleep early, you get up much earlier. The better pattern is to start your day really early, going after God then and locking in time then, because as the day goes on, the day can easily escape you. So it's my hunger and my desire that has driven me to pray late these many years. But even when I was spending 6 or 7 hours alone with God every day, as I did, say, when I was about 17 years old, 17 to 18, thereabouts. Even when I was doing that, uh, I only prayed maybe 15 minutes in the morning, and then I'd pray in the afternoon, and I'd pray a lot at night, and then, of course, hours in the Word. So that's why I say my pattern is not the best to follow. It's best to follow the Exodus 16 pattern of get the manna early in the morning before it goes bad. And in the same way, my praying is not systematic in that every day I've got a prayer list and I'm going through the prayer list, and which is also great. And I had times of doing that. But for me, I want to be communing with God through the day and be God conscious, and then have at least one segment of serious seeking of God. Now, that could be praying in tongues for an hour, and then out of that, a burden will come. It could be very focused, gripped prayer where I'm on my face, groaning and crying out from the depths of my being for God to be glorified and for his kingdom purposes to be advanced. And in other words, there are spurts of intense prayer for specific things. Sometimes they'll last for months and months and months like that. Sometimes over a period of years, there'll be the same theme I'm agonizing over and praying over, leading up to revival. That was an agonizing theme for years in prayer and fasting and crying out. So it is different from one day to another. And some days I'm just sharing my heart with God, getting unburdened. God, I got this on my mind and this, and I need wisdom here. And God said, often I'll write those key things out that I'm throwing on the Lord, the key burdens and concerns that I have, just to kind of officially do it. And then my study of the Word is different. I will every so often read through the entire Bible, sometimes in an intensive way, like the Bible in 90 days. So you're reading, 20 chapters a day or something. I'll do that every so often to just keep the Bible in front of me, keep the Bible in front of me, keep the Bible in front of me. But otherwise, I'm digging into particular things that I'm specifically interested in. So right now, I'm just slowly making my way through the book of Isaiah in Hebrew, thinking of how to translate it and getting insight on the text as I'm going through it again. The reason being that I'll be writing a commentary on the book of Isaiah, God helping, for a Pentecostal commentary series, all respected scholars in their fields, all Pentecostal charismatics. So this is kind of a first, and we're going to try to write uniquely from our perspective and bring things in. So right now I'm just into Isaiah, the 7th chapter now, as I'm going through that and just trying to keep that in front of me and work on translating it. And then otherwise I may really be digging into a particular subject and tracing it verse to verse to verse to verse to verse. And some of that's part of my devotional life. Some of it's part of my study life. Sometimes I just feel I need to be refreshed in a certain area and just read through certain books of the Bible that speak to that, just to take it in and just read them in English. Don't even think about the language. It's just drink it in. So my patterns are more irregular, but very deep and very intense, just irregular. That's why I recommend following a different pattern for yourself. Now, years ago when I was preaching for David Wilkerson, he said to me one night, he said, don't try to become an early morning person. He goes, it's rare that he goes to sleep before 2:30 in the morning. He's a late night person. But what was transforming for him decades ago was he used to watch TV a couple hours at night, and God spoke to him, you give me that time in prayer, and he began to seek God in prayer, and that launched everything with Crossing the Switchblade and Teen Challenge, the amazing ministry he had, and that continues even after his departure. God's response, God's response is apparently immediate and drastic when Moses strikes the rock instead of speaking to it. What's your take on that scenario? He grossly misrepresented God to the people. And this was after God's patience for decades and decades and decades. And that was a line crossed that went too far. And therefore, God immediately dealt with it because he was misrepresenting God to this new generation of Israelites. Even though they still had bad habits, he was misrepresenting God to them. As to whether I'm behind the NWO, the New World Order, if you mean The one that existed in professional wrestling years ago. Yeah, that was me. I was no. Yeah, look, these are some of the things we deal with. Some of the conspiracy theories. Here's one other. One of the reason that I don't follow a lot of these theories is because the ones that I can trace out, like the ones that involve the Jews, I know those are false. I know those are false. I know the facts. And the ones that involve me and the hypercritics, and Brown does this and Brown does, like, it's not true. So the ones I can verify are false. And the others, who can verify? Who's there to? And again, I have been told by experts, by people who know experts and people who quote experts, endless theories that are mutually contradictory, that cannot all be true at the same time concerning the virus and other things. So my concern is going to be, how do we respond practically? That's it. Rodney, thoughts on the parallel about the guy who was going to lose his job and cheated his boss to win friends who could help him out? Yeah, it's probably the most controversial of the parables of Jesus. But what he's saying is the children of this world are often more clever than the children of light. And he's not telling us to be deceitful, but to see how this man used money, right, and reducing debt and things like that, how he used money to win friends. So Jesus says, learn from this. Take the mammon of unrighteousness, earthly money, and use it to win friends forever. How? The most obvious way is by investing in the gospel. Taking that money and now using it through investing it in gospel causes to win friends forever. Joel, would you explain the origin of the afikomen at the Seder meal? It seems to point to Jesus, but what would a traditional Jewish explanation be for it? Yes, so you have this piece of matzah broken, hidden, and 3 pieces, but the middle one broken, hidden. And Christians, Messianic Jews often point to that in the Passover Seder, and see afikomen could be related to a Greek for, the one to come or the coming one, and that you've got Father, Son, Spirit, 3 pieces of matzah, and the middle piece represents the Son, and the Son is broken and then hidden and then found. So Messianic Jews say that the origins of the Seder are somewhat mysterious, and the most likely explanation is that Messianic Jews, who were part of the Jewish community still, had not been pushed out and were participating with their people. They instituted this as a hidden message about Yeshua, and that's how it came about. Now, I know some scholarly Messianic Jews that hold to that and say it's the best explanation for it. But in point of fact, the traditional Jews would have a very different explanation for it, whether they can explain it or not. So I'm just going to put origin, and Babylonian Talmud explains that the word afikomen derives from the Greek word for dessert, the last thing eaten at a meal. The Jerusalem Talmud, however, derives the word afikomen from epikomion, meaning after dinner revelry or entertainment. So if you look at Chosen People Ministries, the origin of the afikomen, they'll give an explanation that would be messianic. Here's an article on Haaretz, which is liberal Jewish news site. Surprisingly to modern Jews who assume it's a half piece of matzah, we do not know what the original intention was. Interpretations range from roast pigeon to after party. So no one knows for sure. That would be the traditional response. There'd be some traditions filled in, but Jewish scholars would say we don't know for sure. Of course, they would resist the idea that Messianic Jews were that involved in the community and had that much influences to institute something like this that became lasting. But did God cause that to happen, to get a message out of the gospel? Could be. But as to the exact origins, we simply don't know. Ricardo, why not praying under COVID-19 pandemic time? Give us more self-surrender to God to make us not be paranoid about COVID. Yes, absolutely, sir. This is a great time to be praying more. This is a great time to be leaning on the Lord more. This is a great time to be examining our own hearts. If your first response was panic or fear, then you need to find out why and go to the Lord about that. And is there insecurity in your relationship with him? Is it maybe you lost another loved one and it's easy to get afraid of disease or sickness or, many different ways this could influence you. But it's good to find out, okay, why did I react like that? Because there's no place for panic. And again, in my new book, any day we'll be telling you how to order it, okay, for April 21st release. But when you pre-ordered from us, we want to bless you with a whole teaching series, 12-hour audio series. It's only $20. We want to give that to you as a free download, just our way of sewing back into you. But I start off the book, the first chapter, Fear Not, and then the second chapter, Practical Ways to Overcome Fear. Terrence, thank you for your contribution, sir. It's a costly thing to follow Jesus. Look it up on YouTube. We need to get back to the reality of the gospel. Sounds like a message that I might have preached. All right, I'll tell you what. We are on no specific clock here. And Bruce Desgato, Sodom and Gomorrah, an apology. So I may take another couple questions and we'll end a couple minutes early, but we had no commercial break, so it works out. Yeah, there's the old saying, Billy Graham and others, that if God did not destroy America, then he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. It's a figurative statement. It's an exaggerated statement meant to be so. God owes no one an apology, ever, because he never does wrong. He only does what is right and good. And if he decides to show extraordinary mercy, he doesn't have to justify that. We just don't want to play games with his mercy. Joshua, did Jesus and his disciples have the Seder meal a day early so Jesus could fulfill the Passover at the exact time the Jews were celebrating the Passover? There's a big debate about that and how things are dated in the Synoptic Gospels versus the Gospel of John. And scholars far better than me in New Testament chronology and background have debated this. So some say he had the meal a day before, and then the lambs were slaughtered. Some say he had it at the normal time. There's a debate about it. Genesis 6:3, what's your understanding of the passage? Is God talking about the lifespan of man, or 120 years until judgment via the flood? Either way is feasible. I wondered about that 48 years ago. Yet his days are 120 years. Does it mean before the flood or lifespan? I think it's more likely he's talking about lifespan. I don't think he's saying 120 years before the flood, but it's possible. In other words, the Hebrew could be read either way. I think lifespan, though. Let's see here. Let me just see if there's anything on Twitter I want to respond to. And let's go over here. And no. Okay. So let's see. Maybe another Facebook question here. Steve, I have an old friend who's now involved with the Black Hebrew Israelites, and he's presenting unreasonable arguments. Would love to hear your thoughts. First, got to pray for him because he's under deception. And second, you got guys like Vocab Malone and others that are out there getting the message out. See if he'll, watch some of the stuff. Or watch a debate where Dr. James White debated one of their elders. That's caused, they lost a bunch of people after that because the error was so grossly exposed. But it's a spiritual deception more than anything. All right, tell you what, folks, we should be back with our regular radio show tomorrow, taking your calls as well. And I should be joined by a special guest, James Beverly, who's got a fascinating book just come out about the Trump prophecies. He's just compiled them as an academic, but wow, very, very interesting stuff. So God willing, we'll be back with you tomorrow. And if you're not on our email list, I know you may be following us Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Go to my website right now. Take a second to do it. Ask Dr. Brown, askdrbrown.org. askdrbrown.org. And just fill out to receive our emails. You get an immediate free mini book and ebook, 7 Secrets of the Real Messiah. And then you'll be getting some very time-sensitive announcements in the days ahead. All right, be blessed, folks, and stay safe.